You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology. Celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, and the X-Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network and around the world by various satellite networks, radio stations, internet providers, and now throughout Europe on Radio X. 1-800-610-7035 is worldwide toll-free. Email xzone at xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And our main website where you can listen to the X-Zone 724-365, www.xzoneradiotv.com. Kerry Cassidy is my guest this hour. She is a documentary filmmaker, investigative journalist, and talk show host of Project Camelot Whistleblower Radio and Camelot TV broadcaster. So let's get right to Kerry. Hey, Kerry, welcome to the X-Zone.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, a little bit. Let's see. I am a documentary filmmaker, investigative reporter, and looks like I'm getting some feedback here. Maybe I'm going to have to grab something. Anyway, so wanted to say that I have a website, Project Camelot, projectcamelotportal.com, and a huge YouTube channel with millions of viewers worldwide.
Let me ask you this, Kerry.
Conferences and
let me ask you this, Kerry. What got you into the whistleblowing business?
Well, I guess I kind of fell into it in a certain way because I was interested in getting the truth out, and I was a frustrated filmmaker. I'd worked in Hollywood for 19 years, worked my way up and became an independent producer, trying to get basically sci-fi movies off the ground, and found that I was running into a glass ceiling. Decided to start attending UFO conferences. I'd done a lot of investigation as part of writing sci-fi screenplays myself in various areas. And so I started attending the conferences and got a wild idea that I would put a camera in front of the face of the speakers and ask them if they'd ever seen a UFO, because I heard a lot of speakers talking, but none of them would talk about their own personal experiences. So that was really the beginning of Project Camelot. And then eventually I invited Bill Ryan, who was head of the sort of disclosure on what is called Project Serpo. He was one of my first interviews.
Well, I just want to stop you there. Didn't you actually meet Paul. Meet Ryan, and form the Project Camelot together.
Well, not exactly. I mean, in essence, although I didn't call it Project Camelot at that point, I was already, as I said, Bill Ryan was one of my first interviewees. Let's see, Robert Salas was another person. He's a person who talks about the UFOs over Wyoming, the missile silos. And I also interviewed Bill Hamilton at that time. And so I attended a conference where I saw Bill Ryan speaking about Serpo. And I invited him for an interview. And we went out after the interview and basically found that we had a lot in common. He invited to show me Stonehenge, and we went to the home of King Arthur. When I was on tour, I had gone to Egypt with a small inheritance. My mother had passed away, and then on the way back, I stopped in England. I met with Bill Ryan, and we went to the former home of King Arthur in Tintagel.
Right.
And that's where we decided to actually put our skill sets together. Mine as obviously a filmmaker, and his as a website, webmaster writer.
Gotcha. Am I correct in understanding that the name Project Camelot actually came from the Camelot Castle Hotel that you stayed at?
No, we didn't stay at a hotel named Camelot, to my knowledge.
This is according to the research on the internet at Rational Wiki. In 2006,
they aren't to be believed in any way because
they're saying the same thing about you. So it's it's kind of funny.
Yeah, they probably lie about us. I've never read that. All I can tell you is that we didn't stay at a hotel.
Okay.
We were at the former home of King Arthur, which is a place called Tintagel,
right,
where you actually go down into the cliffs and you can explore what they say may have been where the castle was.
I see.
So I had a lot of past life memories there, and we both decided that we wanted to continue together, putting our skill sets together. As I say, I had written a screenplay called Project Moondust. And so I knew that black projects used the word project in front of their names. And so I decided to, we wanted to call it Camelot because we both were very inspired by King Arthur and the Round Table. And so I guess we decided that we couldn't call it Camelot because there were too many Camelot websites out there. And I came up with the idea because of my screenplay fronting it with the word project. So we named it Project Camelot.
Tell me about. Tell me about the story of Serpo. I find that rather intriguing.
Well, it's basically from the Close Encounters, the end of the movie, where you see Richard Dreyfuss going on a craft with a bunch of other sort of volunteers and taking off with the ETs. So it was supposedly a human ET exchange program in which there were actually several of these type programs, and Serpo was one of them. How much truth is actually in Serpo is really up for grabs because it was a Defense Intelligence Agency release of information that came through a guy named Victor on a news group, and Bill Ryan was simply a volunteer who offered to kind of cross-correlate and put the information in a sort of easy to search style on a website.
Right.
So
you're referring to Victor Martinez, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And so that's Project Serpo. I mean, the trouble with Serpo is that there's so much that could very likely be disinfo, but we do have from other whistleblowers over the years heard that there have been other human ET exchange programs.
How do we know that we can actually trust the information that comes from a whistleblower, that they just don't have an axe to grind and they have nothing else to lose at this point? So any news is good news.
Well, whistleblowers are people that a real whistleblower is a person who is putting themselves and very likely their family and loved ones on the line to go public to tell the truth about what's really going on. And we live in a matrix in which most of what's in the mainstream media is propaganda and lies. And so a whistleblower is really our best access to what's really going on behind the scenes. We do spend time vetting our witnesses, and we get to know them very well. It's not just a one-shot deal. Sometimes we spend months visiting them, getting to know them, etc. Oftentimes get to know their families and so on. So it's a question of character. We do not rely on documentation, although we are often or can be given documentation. We sometimes go to their place of work or outside of it. We sometimes meet other people that are associated with them. So it's also a case of triangulating their information. Once they give us their testimony, we often are able to, obviously I've been doing this now for 10 years, so we have a backlog of sources and information to kind of cross-correlate and do what intelligence agencies always do. And then at some point, it kind of gets out of the land of possible into the land of very, very likely, let's say.
Why would somebody go to a show like yours instead of going to mainstream media where they could actually blow the whistle with a larger belt?
Well, mainstream media won't put this stuff out there. I
Why
mean,
not?
Many of our whistleblowers they are breaking security contracts in some cases, like Bob Dean, Command Sergeant Major Bob Dean, who is, even was very well known when we first interviewed him, although we had sort of a special rapport. And so, for some interesting kind of magical reason, Project Camelot, sort of made him even more famous than he already was.
I've never heard of him.
But they do have security oaths that they break sometimes. In some cases, they try to maintain a fine line.
But what does that tell you about
like
somebody
Snowden,
what does that tell
the
you?
disinfo is rampant, and
all right, so what
major
does this
media
tell you?
often refuses to print
What
this
does
information.
it tell you when somebody who is supposed to be trustworthy takes an oath, then breaks the oath? How can anyone give this person any credibility whatsoever?
We're talking about a person, in most cases, our whistleblowers are fairly older, and
They have
they're
nothing to
people who
lose?
spent like 40 years working in the system and have realized their mistake. They signed an oath at a young age, and ultimately the oath finishes by telling them they're under threat of death. They grow a conscience during those 40 years and decide that humanity, because we're really talking about something that it has to life and death ramifications for all of humanity, not just them and their families. And ultimately, they begin to realize that the information they have could change the world. And the responsibility weighs on them year after year, and eventually they just absolutely have to go forward and tell the truth. I can tell you that such whistleblowers as Pete Peterson, who had been quiet for 40 years, he spent an entire 3 days talking to us nonstop until 4 a.m. every night.
So what does that tell me?
Because he finally had someone who would
How do I know that
listen.
this guy? All right,
Excuse me? Sorry?
So he has somebody who listens. How do you know that he's just not blowing smoke?
Well, it first of all, we know the credentials and who the person is in terms of their associations, and secondly, because we've been doing this for quite a while now, and thirdly, on an intuitive basis. I'm a psychic and can intuitively tap into where a person's really coming from, and 99% of the time I'm right. So, it is a question of character, indeed.
I understand that you were quoted saying that soldiers who are alleged to be going to Iraq or Afghanistan are actually being sent off planet to fight battles alongside other alien races.
Yes, that's Mark Richards, information from Captain Mark Richards, who has been in prison for 30 years, who he and his father were officers in the secret space program.
How do you know this is real? Like, I've been doing the show for 25 years, and I hear this kind of stuff, and I say, Okay. It just doesn't ring true with me.
Well, I'm not sure why. There's so much, at this point, it's a fait accompli. There's so much evidence out there for the secret space program that it's just extraordinary. And it's really, the evidence is overwhelming.
All right. If there is a secret space program, all right, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt here. Let's say that this secret space program does exist. Why then are we using the technology today to get little robots to Mars instead of using this secret?
It's called a front program. NASA is a front program. There is a vested interest in having two parallel civilizations really at this point. But in essence, you have a cover and people like, anyone in NASA who's doing, and people that even the commercial ventures right now using rocket ships to go to, out to space are just reinventing the wheel in terms of free energy and in terms of, plasma energy and all the different kinds of fuels and technologies that they have at their disposal at this time. So it's a cover.
Have you yourself ever seen a UFO? Have you ever been in a UFO? Have you ever been taken out of the...
Yes, I was abducted as a child.
Tell me about this.
All I can say is I've seen lots of UFOs. You can see them very easily. All you have to do is look up at night and watch and see what you see. They're often will look like stars, but when they start moving and making right and left turns and all sorts of things, then eventually you start to realize you're seeing something different. There are videos I had a sighting in which I actually, I have documented 2 sightings at least on the internet. So on my channel where you can see me talk about my sightings. But I'd seen UFOs as a younger person as well. My family and I were in Lake Tahoe once, and we were all in our sleeping bags staring up at the sky. And suddenly all the stars just started moving and zooming around, and we could see that there were UFOs, and we kind of were jokingly saying they were having a meeting or a conference.
So tell me, I'm sorry, were you actually taken into the UFO? Were you taken onto an interplanetary ride?
I was abducted. I have, brief memories. I'm not one of those people who has total recall of, meeting an ET and talk, although I have had ETs come and visit me. But in terms of the abductions, those I would classify, in some cases, they were probably what you call MILABs. Excuse me, military abductions that involve ETs as well.
Why would an ET come and visit Carrie Lynn Cassidy instead of going to the White House and making themselves known?
They're actually doing a breeding program in which they've been abducting human females now for the last, 40 years, maybe more. They have been fully successful. We now have a whole in essence, a race of children that are fully half gray.
Are you talking about the indigo children?
Not necessarily, but definitely some indigos may actually be ET, half gray ETs. But you have to understand that we are all made up of at least 12 ET races. So the gray sort of mixture is a bit late to the game in a sense in terms of the human genome. So we are when I'm saying when they came to see me as a child, they were eventually, into my teens, were taking eggs from me. And this is very common.
So if all this information has been gathered by you and, other whistleblowers who have this information, how come the rest of the world doesn't know about it?
Well, they do. Actually, it's amazing how sort of closed-minded a lot of Americans are, but I have to say the rest of the world is totally aware. Children are especially aware. Older people that sort of pay attention and don't fall for the matrix in which we live, the mainstream reality, consensus reality, are aware. I mean, come on, let's get real. I don't know. We live in the world of Spielberg's E.T. and Close Encounters. How many years ago was this at this point?
Right,
15 years ago.
We must realize that there's a difference between fact and fiction.
This stuff is not science fiction; it's science fact.
How do you know that? Prove it.
I know it.
Prove it.
I know it because I've been doing in-depth research for the last 10 years, but I knew it before that as well.
You say you've been doing research. What credentials do you have to classify yourself as a researcher?
Well, what kind of credentials would you like? I have a BA in English, graduate work in sociology, a master's degree from Anderson School of Business, and I studied acting and directing and photography, and so I have all kinds of credentials. But in terms of being a good researcher, I'm actually an investigative journalist and a documentary filmmaker. And my evidence is actually on my website. So what I suggest you do is read my articles, watch my over 370
I have read your articles.
Interviews and my countless radio shows for 5 years.
I have, and I wasn't impressed.
Actually, I don't think you have, because the questions tell me that you haven't seen my work.
I have, but I'm still questioning you like a good.
No, I really don't think you have. But
did you not say that humans have been exchanged for alien technology?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. And you also mentioned that on occasion...
That was a deal. In the time of Truman, there was an organization formed called MJ-12.
Wasn't that Eisenhower?
Truman formed MJ-12.
What did Eisenhower do?
Eisenhower met with some aliens and made some deals, but it was Truman that formed MJ-12.
But wasn't the MJ-12 papers proved to be a hoax?
No. Whether those particular papers are authentic or not, I really don't know. I'm not a person who does analysis. I know that Ryan and Bob Woodward have done, I think that's their names, have done a tremendous amount of investigation into those documents. But MJ-12 is real. It's no longer called that. It's an organization that has been in operation for many, many years, and is in some ways in charge of what you might call the UFO sort of question in the United States, anyway.
I understand that there was a time when you believed that you were being targeted by the government.
Yeah, sure. We're all being targeted. Some people don't know it, though.
Why are we being targeted?
Because your government is out to get you.
But isn't the government for the people by the people?
They're not your friends.
Isn't it for the people?
And I'm not talking about the people, the sort of government flunkies that just simply follow orders. I'm talking about the people on the higher levels.
So are you talking
they
about
have a plan.
The New World Order?
You're considered to be collateral damage, and they will... Their false flags are only one way in which they will use you as basically, cannon fodder. So your governments are, they're out to get you. So in a sense, we're all targeted. Some than others, of course.
I believe that one of you reported on, May the 11th, 2015, that she had been the victim of a sinister government plot to kill her using a scalar weapon. Does that ring true to you?
Oh, a scalar weapon. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, they the right side of my face was frozen in the middle of the night. So yeah, I was targeted.
Why?
I had at least 4 independent psychics verify this.
Oh, how about medical doctors? Never mind psychics, because psychics are...
It was obvious the next day.
But why would you put so much faith in what 4 psychics told you?
It's not faith. It's also my own intuition.
Okay.
The fact is, because of the work I do, because it runs up against the people like you and the consensus reality, it really rubs people the wrong way, and they have gone after us. We've had flat tires. We've had wheels fall off our car. We've had all kinds of interference in terms of electronic, and that sort of thing. And we've had death threats as well.
Do you report these death threats to the police?
No.
Why not?
Why?
Well, first of all, it would give your story credibility if you could produce a police report.
I'm not looking for credibility.
Then what are you looking for? What do you do? All right, let me ask you this. If you're not looking for credibility, then why do you do what you're doing? What are you trying to prove? And if you can't prove to people that you are credible...
Excuse me, but the information is available on my website.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm talking to you. I don't.
Yeah, you are.
You know, I don't want my listeners to go to your website right now. If they want to do that after the show, that's up to them.
Well, I've given you plenty of information. What is it you're, ask me a specific question. I'll be glad to answer it.
All right. Why do you do what you do?
To get the truth out, because I believe that we live in a system governed by lies and that human beings are being kept down. They are being misled. Their children are being taken from them. They have been, given implants. Mm-hmm. We live under chemtrailed skies that are shortening our lives drastically. There are lies going out every single day. They force us to pay to live on the land that we own. It just goes on and on. It really, it's all pervasive, really.
All right, you said that the chemtrails are causing our life expectancy to diminish, right?
as well as the poor food, fluorescent lighting.
Then how come?
They could put cell phones, for example. It's well known that cell phones have a technology that wouldn't harm you, wouldn't make you have cancer in your brain for holding the phone up to your head if you're stupid enough to do that. And yet they didn't use it. I mean, major corporations are basically stripping this planet dry.
Okay. All right, but I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you if these chemtrails are shortening the lifespan of people, how come the medical professionals, the medical community, is saying that people are living longer these days than at any other time in the human species history?
Actually, that's a testimony to the human genome.
But that's not what you just said. You said that people were not living as long as they did because of chemtrails.
We should be living thousands of years, not just a mere few extra, 10 or 20.
Okay. But don't you think you should pay taxes in order to get the services that are supplied to you as a citizen of whatever country you live in, or should we just live off the land?
No, I think the tax and the debt economy that we have is a scam. And I have plenty of witnesses that are financial experts that, you could interview if you're interested.
No, not really, because I pay my taxes on time. I have no qualms about
Congratulations.
paying taxes. Yeah. Honest people do that. We pay our taxes.
Yeah, I pay my taxes too.
So
I'm
there
an
you
honest
go.
person
so
too.
there you are. I agree. But if you're saying that, this is
I'm saying that the country is corrupt, and if you don't know that
okay.
you've been living under, actually several feet deep for a very long time, metaphorically speaking, of course.
I have you ever decided to run for government office?
Why would I? No, that doesn't.
Well, why wouldn't you? Because if you're not part of the problem, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And obviously,
actually, I am part of the solution.
But what are you doing
We've changed consciousness around the world in a very major way.
How?
Getting the truth out.
But your truth isn't based on anything except hearsay.
Actually, human testimony is the real history of the planet. And ultimately, people will realize that it's not about documentation. It's not about the history books written by the victors.
It's not
about the true testimony of witnesses and the people who've lived it.
Okay,
and that's where we need to go to get the truth.
So let me just see if I understand that. When people tell us the history about Santa Claus, leprechauns, the Easter Bunny, the Cupid.
All of that actually is Illuminati propaganda that they put down through the ages to lull people to sleep. It's a false reality called The Matrix. Did you ever see the movie?
Yeah, I did, and I turned it off because I found it boring and stupid.
Well, of course, if you buy into consensus reality the way you obviously do, then you would probably find it boring and stupid and not understand it.
You see, I
Why did you have me on your show if all you wanted to do was, because sort of cross-examine me?
I find you a very interesting person, and I wanted to know what made you tick.
Like I say, I write articles every day on my website.
You do a lot of YouTubes, and you do a lot of things. And I just wanted to know what made you tick, because I want to believe, Kerry. I really want to believe, but so far
and you're
nobody
not aware enough to
nobody
know
has ever shown me any.
Are you not
evidence.
Aware of the unseen worlds at all? You're not. You think that when you die, this is it,
Kerry. Let me tell you something. My background is law enforcement. All right?
Even so.
Okay, so
I
believe in evidence. I believe in fact. I believe in evidence. Physical evidence. I have heard so many stories.
Is not a physical evidence.
I have heard so many stories from people who lie through their teeth just for their 15 minutes of fame or to get themselves out of trouble.
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people that put their lives in danger. We're talking about a track record of people being killed for talking about the kinds of things that my whistleblowers talk about.
All right, if your whistleblowers are threatened, are being killed,
they have been, yes. Actually, I've had at least 2 whistleblowers so far die.
But to get the evidence
of very suspicious circumstances. One was a relatively young man with a new baby. We called him Mr. X. He was one of our first witnesses. And the other one was Gordon Novell, who went into the hospital for an injury on his toe and never came out.
He went into the hospital for an injury on his toe and never came out?
Yeah.
Wow.
He died there.
Died of what?
Actually, I don't even know what he died of. He simply died.
But doesn't that interest you? Not like, don't you want to know why this guy went into the hospital? He didn't come out?
I know the fact that he died in the hospital when he went in for a foot injury. It told me all I need to know.
But isn't
I happen to have had contact with him right before he died. I know quite a bit about him, and I've done an interview with him if you want to watch it.
Not really.
He was a rather notorious character. He was involved in Watergate. Some people thought he was involved in the Kennedy assassination. He was basically working for the CIA, but he was also trying to create what is called an ARV, an alien reproduction vehicle, that was in essence something that he was trying to build, and he was going, let's say, off the rails in terms of what they wanted him to do, so they decided to kill him.
Something that I read in an interview that you did in Sneaky Magazine going back to December of 2014, and this is a quote: "Soldiers that are alleged to be going to Iraq or Afghanistan are actually being sent off planet to places like Mars to fight battles alongside other alien races." Those men, just a minute.
There's another whistleblower called...
I'm not finished. I'm not finished reading it.
Oh, sure.
Those men and women will have their minds wiped when they come back. That is why we're having a lot of suicides with ex-soldiers. In some cases, their minds have been wiped so many times they become unbalanced as a result. When they return, they don't know where they've been. They think they've been to the Middle East, but they've actually been elsewhere.
That's correct.
That's a heavy statement. How can you substantiate those claims?
Well, in the case of that, information is substantiated by more than one whistleblower, but the person who actually said that is, again, Captain Mark Richards. And it makes perfect sense to me based on the investigation I've done over the last 10 years. I have at least 2 whistleblowers that would substantiate that besides him, so that makes 3 sources. We call that triangulation.
And I call that skeptical, because how can you prove what these people are saying? There's a lot of people coming over.
Because 1, we know there's a secret space program. 2, we know there are soldiers working in it. Yeah. And 3, we know that there are a lot of suicides happening in the ranks of our military.
That is true.
And Captain Mark Richards is a very very substantial source.
And
he's
yet,
somebody that I do trust, and he has the experience to back it up.
And yet there are colonels, lieutenant colonels, who have read your statements and said there's nothing else but a bunch of bunk.
Well, I'm sure if they're not read in, On one hand, they may be lying to you because they want to mislead you. On the other hand, they actually may not be read in because there are, in essence, two space programs, two militaries.
Is it just the United States that has the two space programs, or is it every other nation?
Other governments as well, mainly China and Russia.
Okay.
Although Russia and the U.S. work together behind the scenes, often in the secret space program.
Let me ask you this.
India also, I guess, is developing one, and there may be others.
Let me ask you this. You talked briefly about Edward Snowden before.
Certainly Iran probably has one.
Okay.
Edward Snowden.
All right, now listen to this. With all the hacking that has been going on of government databases around the world, don't you think that if the information was available or could be secured, let's say by China, no, let's say by North Korea, and North Korea could shame the United States government and prove to the people of the United States that their government has been lying to them since 1947, that they would not take that opportunity to discredit the government of the United States, thus causing the fall of government?
Actually, we have a one world government. It's just that most people don't know that. So, in essence, those governments that you're talking about are actually under the heel, in essence, of the secret space program and the people who are running this planet at this time, who are also backed by various ET races. So, there are some who have tried to sort of step out and release information, but they didn't get that far. The United States goes and pays off any governments that discover anything like crash retrievals on their land, and makes it worth the government's while to let the United States go in and take the technology, etc. And they do this by force and also by making deals.
Why do you
war, for example, Crimea is one place where the United States and the secret space program wanted control of that country. And that is because it contains a very unstable kind of zone that is a lot like the Bermuda Triangle, where tanks and people virtually just disappear. It's a sort of a very anomalous, geomagnetic anomalous place. And there were discovered, I think there were like 9 pyramids discovered, and then they discovered some kind of mummy. And at that point, what we heard from our side was, of course, the war with Ukraine, and then a sort of push to go into Crimea. At this point, it doesn't look like they were successful, but that's what was going on behind the scenes.
Why do you hate the government?
Well, I don't hate the people that don't know anything, although I do think they're probably fairly stupid if they don't at this point, because we're in 2016. There's a lot of information out there.
Yeah, but
I don't hate. I don't really go around hating. I simply know that they're false, that they are doing things that are against what is good for the rest of the world, that they are sort of run by the dark side in essence, and what can I say? They're trying to control humanity and limit its growth, limit its ability to become self-reliant and be sovereign.
Okay, now I admire your passion. I really do.
I appreciate that.
And once again, I'm going to have to ask you why you have not thrown your hat into the political arena to try and make a difference where people will not be able to deny what you're saying. Bring the evidence forth.
Look, elections are rigged. Your so-called political arena is rigged. Judges are bought. They're dirty, most of them. The system itself is corrupt. It's corrupt all the way through. It's run by the mafia, the CIA, and unbelievable numbers of dark magicians, et cetera, et cetera. So, I don't consider people who run for office as going to get very far. I can tell you one little story about Mike Harris, who was going to run as a Republican governor, I think, for the state of Arizona. And he was basically given an ultimatum at a certain point. They said that he either joined ranks with the Republicans and came on board and took their bribes and followed their party line, or or he wouldn't get elected and he wouldn't even be able to run. And ultimately, they tried to run him down and kill him. So he basically had to back out. So that's what I can tell you about your system.
Well, you know what? I love my system. I have nothing but the greatest respect.
Rob, really, seriously, you sound like a fairly intelligent guy.
I am a very intelligent guy.
You're absolutely sleepwalking, and this stuff is, you're just feeding yourself this.
But you know what? I was part of the system for a great number of years.
Well, then
what you're saying as a person who was never part of any established government organization at all, you're blowing smoke up people's asses. That's what you're doing. Because not one single word have you said when it comes to the government is true. Not one single word that you have said about government corruption and about the
not a single word is what?
It's true.
Oh my God. Really, what era are you from? I mean, seriously. Do you do no research at all?
Well, I do.
You have a radio show for what? How many years?
25 years.
This is ludicrous. Come on, Rob. You can't be living in the dark like this. It's amazing.
No, I live in the truth. I don't live in a land of conspiracy where everybody's out to get me, that I can't do this because the government.
I commend you for having the guts to bring me on your show, but, seriously, I can't even take you seriously. I really think you really...
Geez, I wonder what happened there. Let me show you. Oh my God. This lady is out to lunch. I can't believe it. Let me see here. Some of our, this is from Rational Wiki. Kerry Cassidy is an American paranoid gumbut hater who creates ridiculous videos for YouTube and organizes woo conferences. Her defining features are that she talks way too much and is wrong about everything. That's one review, and let me see. What else did our people get up here? And when it goes to the Project Serpo X-Zone Nation, let me see. Project Serpo is a science fiction fantasy launched as though true on several UFO-orientated web forums starting in November 2005. Gullible UFO researchers such as Bill Ryan, Kerry Cassidy, and Linda Moulton Howe were totally bamboozled by this fiction. Author Len Kasten swallowed the story so completely that he wrote a book about it. As late as December 2014, the yarn was retold as true on the overnight radio show Coast to Coast, when Len Kasten was a guest. Well, you know what? Len Kasten was a guest on this show, and I challenged him, just like I did Kerry. Prove it. All these so-called whistleblowers, why do they need to blow the whistle? It's just like the story about, it's just like the story about, what was this guy's name in Roswell? Jesse Marcel. He allegedly goes to Mark Brazil's ranch, picks up UFO debris. Instead of going back to the base with the evidence that he has just collected from an alleged UFO, what does he do? He drives home, wakes up his kid and his wife, lets them play with it, and then he goes to the Air Force Base. How can anybody take these people seriously? Like Santa Claus, God, I've got to tell you something, X-Zone Nation. These people are whacked in the head. Everything's a conspiracy. The government is out to get you. There's no such thing as an honest judge. You've got all these great whistleblowers. They don't take their oath to their country very seriously, do they? And yet they expect to be believed. It's sad. It is really sad. And this is just another proof that the internet is the largest septic tank that man has ever created, because there's more crap in it than there is anything. You know, the sad part is that there are people out there who actually believe this junk. They believe it because they cannot comprehend that life can be so difficult. It has to be a conspiracy. There has to be the man behind the curtain. There's no man behind the curtain. Take a look in the mirror. That's where the problem lies. There are people within the UFO community who are doing a stellar job, who are really honestly investigating. And these are people with investigative credentials. One of them, Kevin Randall, Colonel Kevin Randall, Dr. Colonel Kevin Randall. That's just one of them. Now, do you really believe that the United States government is sending men and women to Mars to fight with other alien species? I didn't ask a very simple question because I figured I'd get a real stupid answer with this one. How come the Mars rover hasn't caught any of these fights? Oh, wait a minute. I've got this. The Mars rover was sent to another planet in order not to send back the information about these wars that are going on. Come on, give your head a shake, people. We know for a fact that Project Serpo was nothing but a hoax. We know that the MJ-12 papers are nothing but a hoax. Do we really need to be led down the garden path? Come on. You know, I call it the ostrich syndrome. You stick your head in the ground and put your butt up in the air, hoping that when you finally get your head out of the ground, you'll realize that nothing had changed, because it's you who can make these changes. And if I was as adamant about the government as Kerry was, why not run? Why not bring your case to the people? Like Bernie Sanders. He's got guts. Donald Trump, he's got guts. Even Hillary Clinton has guts. They are out there putting their... Well, I was going to say money where their mouth is, but the only person who's doing that is Trump. So let me see. They're out there talking to the people. Telling the people. Is it possible that the reason there are no conspiracy theorists running for government is not the fact that the government would snuff them out? Could it be the fact that nobody would ever believe them? It's crazy. I know. I have no idea why people do this. I don't believe that there are soldiers that are being sent to Mars to fight alongside the aliens. I don't believe that there is reverse engineering being done from alien craft. Hell, I don't even believe there was a UFO that crashed in Roswell. Something crashed. Was it extraterrestrial? I doubt it. I doubt it. You know, we're looking at a time in history where there was a lot going on. We just came back from World War II. We just came back from dropping 2 atom bombs. It was a sad day for humanity. But aliens? Nah. Steven Spielberg is a very smart man. No two ways about it. Gene Roddenberry, a very smart man. No two ways about it. Chris Carter in The X-Files, another smart man. Because sensationalism sells. Nobody wants the truth. Nobody. Especially people who believe that there are reptilians in this world. when there are people in this world who believe that there is an ulterior motive, a government behind the government that the aliens are in business with. That's what they want. They love sensationalism because sensationalism sells. The truth? Nobody wants the truth because it's not sensationalistic enough. Just like all these reality shows on TV. You think they're reality shows? Come on. Come on, people. You're smarter than that. Yes, I've got a show that I do. Yes, there are people that I give the benefit of the doubt to. Yes, there are people I believe. And there are other people who I just believe are smoking, who are blowing smoke up the butts of other people who are stupid enough, who don't have enough self-control, who do not have the strength to face a day without blaming it on a shadow government or on the aliens. Before aliens, it was the devil. Remember him from the Bible? Yeah. So are the aliens of today the replacement of the demonic or satanic forces of the past? Here's a question for you, Exxon. In the great structures around the world, there are gargoyles. We've all seen them, right? Have you ever seen an extraterrestrial? You know, the gray, the elongated skull or whatever. Have you ever seen one of those on a building? Nope, neither have I. So what does that tell you? Well, it tells me that people need a negative force in their lives so that they don't have to take responsibility for what is going wrong because they do not have the ability or they do not have the courage or the stamina to say, hey, wait a minute, that's wrong. I'm going to make it better. But when you just decide that, you know what I'm going to do, I'm just going to say all these things, I'm going to take the word of whistleblowers, I'm going to tell everybody that the United States of America is sending people to Mars to fight with the extraterrestrials. They're not really going to Afghanistan. They're really not going to the Middle East. They're going to Mars. You tell me. All I can say is that I have faith in the system. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. Hell, if the government wants to take all my phone bills, all my data tags or meta tags, have fun. Kill yourself. Enjoy it. You'll probably send me a sympathy card. You got to pay your taxes. You know, who else is going to pay for law enforcement? Emergency medical care. You're part of society. You're part of a pack. I had a conversation once years ago with Arden Elby, and he was the former head of NASA. And I asked him, and this was on air, I asked him what NASA would do if they could find proof during one of their missions, if they found proof during one of their missions that ETs were real, that UFOs really did exist. Do you know what he told me? That NASA would get the information out to the masses as soon as they could because of one simple little fact. It would ensure funding for NASA. And you know what? It made perfect sense. So when I hear of astronauts who are saying that they've seen UFOs in outer space, I don't know what they've seen. Maybe it's something that they do not know that is not identifiable to them. That's what a UFO is, unidentified flying object. So what do you do, Exo Nation? Do you believe? Well, I believe when I see proof. And I want to believe. I really want to believe, but I will not go on the word of 3 whistleblowers who may or may not have an axe to grind. And if you're going to say that these people are credible, and if you say somebody went into the hospital for a toe problem and dies, wouldn't you want to know of what happened between the time he entered the hospital until the time of death before making assumptions that there was some nefarious force at work here? I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.